not had power. And he was telling me that he had to buy fuel of 1,500 naira. And, by the time that fuel of 1,500 naira finished, he had not made the 1,500 naira back. He's not able to pay his barbers who are barbing in his shops, and he's unable to increase his prices because he's afraid that customers would go elsewhere where they may have light or so on and so forth. It's not easy for business people, for small entrepreneurs to, I beg your pardon, beg your pardon. It's not easy for small entrepreneurs to actually get their businesses done. Businesses are shutting down every day. People are losing their jobs. And I'm hoping that at the end of this talk, we as media people remember that the reason why we are here, the reason why we're journalists is to be the voice of the voiceless. And we will indeed put their plight at the nexus of our reportage. There can never be security if the economy is terrible. There can never be political stability if the economy is terrible. And the economy would never work if small businesses are not given a chance to thrive. So thank you so much. I know I've taken a lot of your time, but thank you. I feel very passionately about this.
Thank you very much, Mofe Oyatogu, on-air personality, Star FM Lagos. We are moving very fast right now. And the next panelist that will be speaking is no other than Sheriff Quadri. Mr. Sheriff Quadri is the program's manager with Nigerian Info. We'd like to hear your side of the story and then solutions that you like to profile. Over to you, Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, my very respected seniors in the house. I want to thank everybody for their insight into this topic. At first, when the keynote speaker and the NIPR president said a few things, I wasn't really sure, and when Obi gave his speech, I wasn't really sure of the topic that we're discussing anymore. I looked through, I kept looking at, the brief I was given, and I kept wondering, like, okay, so is the media in the line of fire here, or we're here to discuss economic stability and the security situation as media practitioners? And I said, look, perhaps what I would do is to speak to both areas. The state of the media, what the media is going through, and then the topic. And maybe I got the topic wrong, but I will still speak to the topic regardless. Let me start with I don't know, Doctor, how many minutes do I have, so I can know how to be very brief?
Okay, you have like 4 to 5 minutes. 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay, let me see. Let me start with the media because it's my constituency. The media has myriad of challenges. First and foremost, the statement that the media is a fourth realm of the state, a fourth estate of the realm rather, it's okay, it's good, but above all, media owners are businessmen. Doing business, media business in Nigeria is hard. It's Herculean. It's almost impossible. I will try to break this down as quickly as possible, right? So starting from the beginning of you trying to procure your license, it's almost impossible. It's like you have to know somebody to get a license. Now, the processes itself is flawed because nobody even cares whether this person coming in to get a license, has what it takes to be a media business owner. Like there is little to no scrutiny as to whether that person has capability to have a media house. They just believe that, in fact, to the government themselves, it's a business. So you get to have all kinds of people, all kinds of personnel who claim to, that's what's most likely responsible for the washed down nature of content that you see in the media these days. And I'm talking about the entire media landscape, both print media and digital broadcast media. So it's always a difficult thing to want to get quality out of, because let's be very frank, quality media broadcast is not a cheap business. You need good investment. And the president of NIPR said something earlier about, the media is a true reflection of society being a lazy argument. But I beg to disagree. If you have a very weak economy, you cannot have a strong media. It's impossible. It's practically impossible. That is why it's not an excuse for the media, in some cases, being a sellout, because they have to remain in business. If the socio-economic of the country is stable and is rich enough, the media can get business sustained. The media can get enough business to kit up their reporters, their personnel, to send them to anywhere to go and cover a story. The media can have reporters. Just try. I mean, we're all media practitioners here, at least most of us. Just try and talk to some friends who claim to be reporters of some media houses in some areas, and talk to them about, the benefit that they get. It's appalling, because it's expensive to run a media house. It's absolutely almost, in fact, if care is not taken, we're still talking about the media, dancing to the tune of the government. Media houses will be shutting down. Just because of the disease situation that we have now, we're hearing some media houses cannot even do the required broadcast that they used to do. So it's quite expensive running the media. I'm not saying this as an excuse, but I'm just saying that in as much as we want the media to give us the best, I think the focus should be on governance. And this is where I will link my conversation, my speech, to the governance of the country. Because the governance of the country is responsible for everything, from social to poverty to education to infrastructure. All of these things culminate into what you get at the end of the day. If we have good governance, poverty will be greatly reduced. When poverty is greatly reduced, there will be less banditry, there will be less kidnapping for ransom, there will be more employment opportunities, people will get jobs, there will be less insecurity situation. Now, let me give a context to all of this, right? Now, bad governance over time is largely responsible for what we are experiencing now. And I'm gonna predicate this on some data from the MBS very quickly, so that we get the context of where I'm coming from, right? Now, let's go to the Northeast, for instance. The government data available from the MBS said that education in the Northeast is horrible. 52.4% of boys in the Northeast don't have access to education whatsoever. Zero access to education whatsoever. Borno, Yobe. And the same thing is happening in the Northwest right now. That is where you now have proliferation of banditry that is just been designated as terrorism now. So there's really nothing the government is doing in terms of, because you cannot bomb poverty away. You cannot, if you like, go and gather 1 million Tucano jets. You cannot blow poverty away. You need to first strengthen your policies. How do you get your boys educated? If they're educated, they create wealth, they get independence, they have enlightened mind. Nobody can cajole them to join any terrorist organization. Chebi was Boko Haram we were talking about just the other day. And now it has metamorphosed into ISWAP. Because poverty is the backbone of every issue. If you have bad governance, there's nothing you can do about it. You have to first get your young boys educated. Once they're educated, they have independent mind to be able to think on their own, rationalized thing. Northeast is one part, Northwest is one part. The Southwest here will soon get to that point. Because what has been saving the Southwest so far is the state-sanctioned agberos. One day, government wakes up and says there won't be agberos again. What do you think will happen to those boys? Or the 1 million boys are our boys that are troubling people all around Lagos. We are almost there. Now, on the part of the media in addressing bad, because the media has a role to play. Let's not kid ourselves. But the problem is the framework, the atmosphere in which the media is working. Nobody wants to give the media the benefit of the doubt that the atmosphere is hostile. The atmosphere is very hostile. Mr. Ayatollah said it just a minute ago. Very, very hostile. Like, it's so hostile that radio stations are being demolished just because you say things against the government. Licenses of broadcasting houses are being suspended. Fines are being dished out. Now, nobody sees that. Nobody talks about that. But we want the best from the media. But who defends the media? Who comes to the defense of the media? Who protects the media? Don't forget that we have people who work in these places. The owners want to remain in business. If you go and call out a governor now and say that Agba Jalingo was just freed just the other day. He spent over 180 days in detention. We now have to have international organization crying for Agba Jalingo. We are all here in this country. We kept quiet and we want the best from the media. I interviewed late Obadiah Melafia the other day. My station was under fire. I almost lost my job simply because the man revealed some certain truth, bitter truth, that in some other crimes, what he said would have just gone under investigation and things will be followed up. But then they came after the media. Our station, Wazobia in Kano, was shut down. You can't see. The media is doing the best the media can do in this kind of environment. This is the best we are going to get. Let's not just kid around. Because we have people with military mentality in Agbada. They will come after you. And like you said, like everybody know, the media is the sector of any government or any society, especially democratic society, that can actually hold government to account. But if the media is not allowed to hold government to account, then what happens? This is it. Bad governance, because they get away with everything. Everything. I'm sorry, it's a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. I'm sorry if my voice sounds very, very loud. Well, let me just add one more thing before I go. So I'm the programs manager for Nigeria Info. And when I was first made programs manager, I wanted to go all out to conduct, interviews and big interviews and the rest of them. Well, guess what? They will not come. See, we want to hold them accountable. You want to ask them questions. You want to ask them about policies. Try now and see who will come and answer you. Even Lagos here, you want to interview somebody, they will not come. In fact, you want to interview another person that they know that is anti-government, they will threaten you that they will seize your license, they will take over your office, they will do this. It's easier to say, if you're in the field, you know that the media is doing everything the media can do. It's not okay, we can do more, but unless the atmosphere is conducive enough, this is all we're going to get. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Quadri, for that wonderful insight. Well, you are not wrong. you got the theme correctly. You know, like I said earlier on, there are two sides to it, looking at the media side and then looking at the responsibility of government, what is expected of government in this particular role to play. So thank you for that wonderful insight once again. Right about now, I will be moving to having Ololade Akimurele, the Deputy Editor, Business Day. Lolade, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, please go on.
All right, thank you very much. I mean, for me, I think it's so much has been said. I'm really glad to be here. It's from what has been said already, there's really very little for me to add because I don't want to start regurgitating what others have said already. But I'll start from the very impassioned speech by Mr. Quadri. I think that was good. He made some very valid points in his speech, because really the truth is there are a lot of challenges with running a media business in Nigeria. It's what it is. I mean, we at Business Day, for instance, we're trying to build a subscription model, you know, whereby reader revenue can even sustain the business. So that way we're less reliant on adverts, you know. But I can tell you that, I mean, it's not that easy. It's not been an easy ride, because you're trying to convince people to part with money to pay for news when this is a country where that is a poverty capital of the world, where more than half of the population are living below $1.90 a day. You know, so that's really a challenge. So for sure, I understand that sometimes the media houses tend to stray away from their core mandates because they are trying to, you know, balance out doing their core reporting with, you know, trying to remain a going concern. But still, I will still say that there's still so much for us to do in terms of capacity building, really. Mr. Awoyemi made a point earlier about, you know, people who just dabble into journalism without being subject matter experts. I think that's really a big problem that we need to talk about and address. I mean, and it's something that we can resolve on our own. We don't need the government to resolve that for us. You know, it's just about recruitment. Sometimes you find that most of the issues, especially about the economy, because that's basically what we at Business Day cover anyway, they don't tend to be as insightful and analytical as you would expect. You know, I can give you an example. So when the National Bureau of Statistics said that the economy grew by 3.4% in 2021, a lot of media houses just went, yes, this is the highest growth in 7 years. No doubt, yes, it is. But what was lacking was that in-depth analysis. Yes, it's the fastest growth in 7 years, but it's because of the low base from 2020, when we had the strict COVID-19 lockdown. That was basically missing in most of the articles I read from different media houses. And I was disappointed, really, because I just felt like, I mean, if you're talking about, I mean, you know that government officials tend to jump on these things. Oh, yes, Buhari has delivered the fastest economic growth in 7 years, and they think they're doing the right things, but they're not, because the economy is actually shrinking. In 2014, the economy was about $540 billion. You know what I mean? And then in 2021, it was less than $430 billion. So the economy actually shrunk by 20%. So yes, if you're comparing 2021's growth rate with 2020, yes, you see a big bump because of the COVID lockdown and the impact it had on the economy. But to then go and write stories just looking at it from that narrow perspective that the economy has grown at the fastest pace in 7 years, it's not good enough. It's not telling all the sides of the story. So I think for sure we need to step up, really, to be able to provide more in-depth analysis and really hold government accountable for what they do. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, we're all affected, we're all impacted by the policy choices and policy direction of this administration. You know, another example I can cite is the debt. I've not seen enough analysis, trust me. In fact, I feel like maybe one day all the media houses should just agree that, you know what, on this day, we're all going to on our front page, but at least that's for print anyway. Or if we can actually not limit it to print and say that, okay, you know what, even radio stations, broadcasters, on this day, we're just going to talk about Nigeria's debt situation, because it's a big problem. and then we dedicate a day to that, and we're all talking about it, just to get that kind of, to have that kind of collaboration that will really get the government to listen. Because I don't understand how your debt stock goes from about 15 trillion in 2014 to 40 trillion now, and you really cannot say this is exactly what we've achieved with this. Nigeria has borrowed the most external debt of all emerging market and frontier market countries since 2015. And it's really amazing to hear that. I mean, because I'm wondering, so where has that money gone? And don't forget that even the public debt stock, the data that we have, doesn't even include the borrowings from the central bank, which is about 18 trillion now. So where has all the debt gone? Really, nobody's asking those questions. I mean, we do it once in a while, but I feel like if we have those kind of concerted efforts, we come together, collaborate, and then just make it a really big deal, talk about these things, put pressure on the government to tell us exactly what is going on. We borrowed $1.25 billion to finance petrol subsidy. Who does that? A country that has a budget deficit of 6.3 trillion naira is borrowing $1.25 billion at 8%, which is very expensive, because you want to pay for fuel subsidy. Who benefits from the fuel subsidy? The rich. They benefit the most from the fuel subsidy. Subsidized food, subsidized education, subsidized healthcare. What are we doing about this? Are we really highlighting these topics enough? What are we, so I feel for sure there's so much we can do. We can do better in terms of really highlighting what the key issues are, and just trying to get things on the right course. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lolade. That's a very wonderful proposition that you have set forward. It would be nice to have, all the media outfits in Nigeria talking about one particular topic on a particular day. The print media having it on the front pages, the broadcast media having it, as part of their editorials, everyone talking about the same topic. I think if we continue to do that, there'll be a lot of progress recorded in this particular area. Next, I have Dr. Femi Adekoya, who is the business editor of the Guardian newspaper. Dr. Adekoya, are you there? You have the floor. Hello, Dr. Adekoya. It would be nice if you can put off your camera. I think you have your network is not very strong, so if you can put off your camera, then we'll be able to hear you.
Can you hear me? Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you. Very clearly, we can hear you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Apologies for being in and out of the program. Yes, I'm in transit presently, so that's responsible for glitches that I'm experiencing. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak, to be part of
Hello, I guess Dr. Adekoya is having some technical issues there. Dr. Adekoya, can you hear me? I think he's off. I think he's off right now. Well, we'll wait for him to come back, and then we now move
Hello,
on.
yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. Please go on, go on.
Yes, sorry for the disruption. So as I was saying earlier, I said the media are probably caught in between two responsibilities. The media practitioners are caught between their social responsibility function and also having to also perform development functions in terms of developmental journalism. So when you look at the challenges, and one of the things that we also forget to acknowledge is that the media organizations are not isolated from the society. We all belong to the same society, we all practice, we all live in this same environment. So now the media organizations are expected to be socially responsible, reportage of stories, events. However, when you consider the fact that development journalism, the tenets of development journalism also talks about looking at, for a nation like us that is developing, we talk about how to encourage and promote developmental stories and issues. Now, this is where the dilemma comes in. We are in an environment that is not so conducive for businesses to operate, and yet you are expected to also talk about the good things. While we do not dismiss that fact, it's going to be a tough call to achieve that. And when you look at issues of security, it's almost very difficult for you not to talk about how it affects the economy. So it's easy to say, oh, the media isn't writing about this, isn't writing about that. But are we also considering the fact that what do people really want to know? If we don't report it, someone else is going to write about it. And that's why you find out that most of the disturbing facts you even hear about the country when it comes to security matters, you find them coming sometimes from even foreign agencies, because the media organizations in Nigeria are probably stifled. If you write something that is out of context or that does not make the government happy, it either gets sanctioned or imposition of certain fines in some cases, or duties on newsprints, as the case may be. So that's the first part of this issue. The second part of this issue is also the fact that are Nigerians, are citizens ready to pay for good journalism? It's easy to blame journalists, it's easy to blame the media for not doing so much. But the question we also need to understand is this: media organizations operate as a business entity, they are a going concern. So for you to thrive in an environment, are people really, really, really ready to pay for good journalism? So you have a situation by, with the exception of Business Day and maybe one or two online platforms who are deploying subscription strategy, they are deploying subscription options to access the news. But the question also you ask yourself is this: except it is exclusive, these are the same content you can get everywhere. Who is sponsoring the media? Who is buying the media? These are questions we all need to answer. Are people really, really ready to pay for good journalism? Even as much as the content might be good, are people ready to support it? We've had fantastic platforms that have come up with several contents, but are people ready to sponsor? If I write a story about, for instance, LCCI tomorrow, and LCCI is not happy about it, and LCCI is a video advertiser in my platform, will LCCI withdraw its patronage? If LCCI withdraws its patronage, how do I sustain being in business? So until we remodel business journalism, the business of journalism, towards subscription, where people actually do pay, then the citizens own the content they want to hear, they want to watch, and they want to read. Until then, it's going to be a tough call to think that the media will serve the interest of the public. The media are meant to serve the interest of the public. But one of the things you also find is this: the people who sponsor the contents will end up being the ones dominating the various media platforms. So I think it's an opportunity for us to look back and ask ourselves, go back to the model, our business models as it is, just like the same way diesel affects every other business, the same way it affects journalism, it affects every other media organization. Some media organizations are even struggling to survive, with the exception of a few. While it cannot be excused, I keep telling people, when we blame some journalists for doing something, I ask myself, who empowered them? Some organizations basically just give you ID card and you're a journalist. So when some unethical issues are reported, who sanctions such actions? So these are issues I feel we need to get to the point and begin to address. And for the security of the nation, if we really need to get to address these issues, we also to understand that the media basically reports these issues. We do not investigate. In an ideal state where things work, a lot of investigative stories have been published. Have we seen any form of prosecution afterwards? Have you seen the security agencies going after the corporates? Rather, you find the security agencies going after the journalists that did the stories. So there are lots of disincentives for journalists. Most of what we do these days are probably for posterity, that, okay, it's in the record that you once did a story about this, even though the government did not take an action about it. So how long do we want to sustain this? I think these are the questions we need to ask ourselves. How do we sustain the business of journalism to ensure that people get good and quality stories to read at every point in time? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adekoya, for that wonderful, wonderful perspective on the topic of discussion today. Right about now, we are unable to reach out to Mr. Bosin Omofaye. I'm sure he's having some technical issues. As soon as we are able to get in touch with him, it will come right on, and then we'll listen to his own perspective. Right about now, I would like to also go back to the keynote speaker before we now take the panelists through the various questions that we'll be having from all participants. So, Mr. Awoyemi, you have listened to the panelists. We don't know if you have something to add to what you have said earlier on before we move on to the Q&A things.
One is to acknowledge the quality of the contributions, but most importantly is to understand that context is always important in presenting facts. We always say at Pusher that in God we trust, every other thing is data. So what does the data tell us about these comments that we've had? I got into this business after years of working with a number of journalists, but I realized that in order to do the work very well, I had to go for training. So I went to UK for training, even though I did not feel it was important for me to, I could get the training from the Nigerian institution, but I went for training. I also went for courses at Reuters and what have you. In fact, it's commendable that Bosin is here. I also did internship around someone like a Bosin, for example, and also quite a number of leading editors in Nigeria. And I can tell you honestly, it is a very serious profession. And those who are involved are not jokers, as what most people tend to believe. And it is from that spirit that I made my contributions here, that these people have committed their lifelong desire to exercise themselves as professionals. That word, professional, is, however, that important enough for me to start with Sharif Quadri and his comments about, I think he mentioned something about subscription not being easy. I believe that's Sharif, right? Yeah, it's true. Nigerians do not take subscriptions that easy, especially from news. I believe another colleague of ours also mentioned the fact that convincing people to part with money is difficult. But here's the truth of the matter, is to understand the stage in which an industry is at all times. and to understand the developmental nature of an industry and the incremental value that comes with it. So it may not be happening now, but it's a desired objective that we will work towards. You will notice that the Guardian of UK also faced similar problems. FT also faced similar problems. It's not just unique to us as well. That the Guardian of UK is actually asking for donations because he couldn't really build up the subscription. And that is a developed and matured market as you have it. So it's a challenge for us to understand. But the key word that was used there was about convincing people to part with money. Value attracts financial consideration. And at some point, you see that there's a tendency towards moving towards specializations. And in those specializations, you have people who therefore have to understand what is done. There is a course I was happy to deliver on. It's called The Business of Journalism. I use the word the business of journalism to explain the fact that you can still hold your own integrity by setting up standards around yourself in such a way that you may not make the quantum leap that everybody expects in society, but you will have a steady growth. And so to that extent, I would say to my colleagues that, yes, it is not true. It is true that we have a challenge there, but it's going to be something that we'll have to work on. But if you look at this, there's a concept called the fair news coverage amongst different stakeholder groups. I believe it was the Madam Mofe who was talking about ethnic and what have you, a very excellent point. And she's right about that. But if you look at, if you take a very serious look in the last 8 years, most coverage is around politics, but very little about governance. You see, we cover politics, but we don't cover governance. Governance is what the watchdog role is all about. It is not about politics. And so you find that most of the titles is political party did this. Nobody's interrogating the process. Nobody's interrogating compliance. Nobody's interrogating things like financial contributions among political parties, which is about governance. But we discuss this person is campaigning against this person. Nobody's discussing issue around the recruitment criteria. Nobody is even saying that as of today, amongst the list of people being positioned to lead the country, how is the media framing the issues upon which manifestos will be decided? How is the media going beyond just holding people to political debate, framing those conversations? But you see, a man who is hungry cannot start telling people how to approach his house. And in fact, that is why I go back to the issue of the business model of the media industry. If anybody here can explain the business model, I will understand. If you take a look at my colleague from Business Day who spoke about their niche, that's a niche service provider. And they tried this thing almost about 3-4 years ago on subscriptions, and they created walls, firewalls to create premium content. But they found that people were not interested. And so you are subjected back to the whole idea. It is for this reason that I believe that the media must begin to take a look and understand how do we address the funding model around the industry in order to fulfill the role. My dear brother, Obi Asika, made very, very distinct contributions that I do not have any arguments about, except to expand on one point. When he said that the way we communicate has to change, it is not just about the generation we're dealing with, it is about the level of enlightenment in society. If you pick the newspaper this morning, ask yourself, what information did you get that is useful for you to move around? Now, for example, in Lagos recently, they said that people who have breakdowns of vehicles would have committed a criminal offense. In the days of old, a media house should have been able to challenge that. Now, even after challenging that, the question then goes around our justice administration system, that after writing, nothing happens. People can just ignore you. And so the media house's ability to, when I say media house, I'm looking at everybody in totality, go to radio and whatever, has a major challenge for itself. The society itself is not able to help the media in its delivery of the work. But if we're going to live with one thing, let us agree that the press release syndrome must stop, for example. No matter what it is, your challenges, and no matter what it is that you are doing, yeah, you can carry press release, but whatever happened to the editorial page anymore? The society gets the media it deserves. What we have right now is a situation whereby we undermine the media to such an extent that it is impossible to get any redress. And there's nothing that spells this in more clearly than what we've seen in the last 1 week, whereby the media brings about an issue and nothing is done, and everybody goes back into their own cocoon, trying to survive. While people are hungry, like I said, trying to survive, it is difficult to create excellence. And as such, what you will see happening is that there will be an oasis whereby a few people will begin to understand that in order to survive, they must create a niche for themselves. I do not have an answer for everyone, but I think the most important thing is to understand that to have economic prosperity and to have security in this nation, it has to happen only because the media is able to hold those in leadership accountable. Maybe the larger conversation amongst us is to understand how we intend to do that. But I want to commend the quality of contributions from participants, and I've taken quite a number of points that will help me improve my own viewpoints going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, our keynote speaker. We appreciate your participation and perspectives in this regard. Next, we still don't have Mr. Bosin online, but right now, I want the panelists to just make some contributions on things that we really need to do to set the economy of Nigeria back on track. First, which is port reform. What is the government doing? What can we do? We cannot be talking about gaining income and revenue from export when our port administration is nothing to zero. We need to talk about port reforms. We need to look at multiplicity of taxes, double taxation, creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. So these are some of the things, the issue of power supply, because there is no remarkable progress that can be recorded if the economy itself is not powered. So these are some of the things I would like the panelists to speak on before I now start to move to the Q&A questions that we have from participants. So I would like Mofe Oyatogun to open the floor, being the only lady among the panelists. Over to you, Mofe.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Labi. Can you hear me?
Very clearly.
All right, but you should know that there are no women in journalism. Talking about port reforms, that would be great, but I want to just quickly look at something I have termed purposeful spending. We like to borrow or throw money at things, and at the end of the day, there is no impact assessment. We're not able to find out if we have achieved what we wanted to in the first place. Look at the power situation. So much money has been sunk into that sector, and we're still in darkness. Has anybody sat down to do an impact assessment of all the billions and billions, I'm sure running into trillions now, that we have spent on power to no avail? And the answer is no. I would like to look at also all the huge borrowings, you hear that the government has borrowed this, borrowed that, we're in debt to the tune of so much that is humongous to think of. And you ask yourself, it's borrowing in and of itself is not a bad thing. But what are you borrowing for? Are you achieving what you are borrowing for? In the case of Nigeria, I really don't know how to answer that. Because if you're going to borrow to pay for fuel subsidy, then you ask yourself, is that not consumption? You are never going to get anything out of that. Now, I know there may be arguments for and against, but this is where I come in with my little terminology that I call purposeful spending. Had it been we had borrowed and used it to set up a foundry, do you know Nigeria does not have a foundry? How can we move from developing to developed without a foundry? Ajaokuta still is moribund. So how can we set up what we have there right now? And this is not to mock the efforts of people like Innocent Motors and others assembling vehicles. But imagine if we're able to go to our foundry, cut up our metals and all of that and do everything here. Imagine the industries, the ripple effect of that. So I don't know if it is time for us to take another look at what we use money that we borrow for. If it is possible to plant money in projects that would actually, generate some sort of, interest for us all as a nation. The other one I want to talk about is that we seem to think that money is the answer to all the problems that Nigeria is facing. But if we just tweak our policies a little bit, right now, the Nigerian business environment appears to only work for a handful of people. But what if we tweak it so that we have like 1 million Dangotes who are opening huge fertilizer plants and all of that? Imagine the factory in and of itself, how many people it will employ, and all the other industries that, the ripple effect of that will cause. It will be wonderful for the nation. Nigeria is so fertile. I'm not even sure we really need much fertilizer, but it will be great to export to other countries who don't have the sort of fertile soil that we have been, blessed with. And that will also bring in some good hard currency for us as a nation. So maybe we should look at policies, because right now it appears as though the small businesses are just left to flounder. I did a little investigation on my own, and I realized that the local governments, they have a revenue drive. It's become a revenue generating thing. You open a lockup shop, for instance, they will come in and say, bring money for television and radio. And you say, but there is no TV or radio. It is a provision shop. All I have is a fan, but they will collect TV, radio, they will collect padlock, and then another set of people will come, and then the area boys too will come. So you have to settle. And how much is the margin on the provisions that you are selling at the end of the day? So we have to look at what is the policy for small businesses. We have to create a protective business environment for these businesses. Like, for instance, the barber. Is there a way that we could subsidize the barber? Is there, I don't know, but I'm sure you erudite and enlightened gentlemen will come up with it. It's something that's been niggling at me for a very long time, is that I feel that we need to develop a protective policy for small businesses so that small businesses could thrive. If you look at China, is a huge economy, but look at the genesis of their progress. And you find out that they encourage tiny little businesses. And those tiny little businesses collectively became the monster that China is today. So I hope that we can follow that route as well. So let the other gentlemen speak on the other. I don't want to take too much time.
Thank you very much, Mofe. While you were speaking, Obiasika mentioned that there is an organization known as Tracker Nigeria. They track all projects, that you can also see how the money is spent and the status of each of the projects and what they do with the money. So that's
Tracker NG.
Okay, Tracker NG. Okay, Tracker NG. Thank you very much. So maybe
Thank you,
you just have to come in on that note, Mr. Obiasika. Thank you. So let's have your thoughts on some of the things government should do in terms of port reform, multiplicity of tax, power supply to the people, and creating an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Over to you, Obiasika.
Thank you very much. I'll do my best to actually talk about the ports, because I know the ports, I think the key issue with the ports is about how we build and connect our infrastructure. Obviously, with the situation where the Dangote refinery and the port there, plus the Lekki port, the Lekki Free Zone port are coming alive. We're beginning to see that the Calabar port, the Port Harcourt port are coming alive. What we haven't done in this country, and we have been cheating ourselves for 60 years, is we have not been connecting our infrastructure. So you have a situation where our rails are not connected to our ports, taking pressure off our roads. And this is actually about where the media would have been coming in over the years to keep government focused on deliverables. And we're all victims of this. And because we're all victims of this, we can see it happen. Those of us that live in Lagos, we saw what was happening in the Lagos port, and it seemed to have taken 5-6 years. And really, when you think about it, what is the issue? The issue would have been rail evacuation out of Tenkan and Apapa instead of the roads. And then that means that you relocate the trucks out of the center of the city. And this is about city planning and about quality of life for those who live in cities. The clear reason why Lagos is overcrowded is because other states of Nigeria are failing, right? And they're not delivering jobs to their people. And we have a situation where the public sector of Nigeria cannot deliver the jobs that will drive the economy going forward. And this also points to a failure in our educational system. For me, our approach to education is flawed. It has been flawed for 30 years. It's defective and deficient, and we're not focused on what the real future is. And if you remember, the first time I spoke, I talked about our opportunity. Our opportunity in reality is, and what we should be focusing on, is how to re-educate ourselves. Those of us that are in our 50s need to re-educate ourselves to be working with technology. Those who are coming out of school today, 16, 17, we need to be training 1 million people a year as coders and digital workers so we can build a gig economy and a platform economy. We are already in the 4th industrial revolution. We already have 60 to 80 million mobile devices in this country that are smartphones. We already are in that space. We cannot be going backwards when we need to be going future forward. So yes, we need hard infrastructure in terms of bridges, roads, power, social welfare, healthcare, and that's governance. But to progress this country and grow this economy, I led the National Development Plan on the creative industries and culture and hospitality, including media. And I can tell you that with or without government, by 2030, that sector will be doing $100 billion per annum in this country. So yes, media has its challenges. Media investment is hard. The media environment is very, very difficult, but the business model is critical. Media for too long has relied on government subvention and public sector subvention and subvention from politicians. Now you've got to focus on value creation. That's what Femi is talking about. What brings people to you is the value of what you're doing. And that is how you benefit as you generate. I wanted to say that there's a lot of Elon Musks in Nigeria. I was at Ian Oboyeji the other day, co-founder of Andela, co-founder of Flutterwave. That's one guy I was asking. I said, Ian, when are you 30? He told me he's 31. Those are two companies, probably billion-dollar companies, that others he's doing right now. And the truth of the matter is just about mindset. And that's the same thing we did to unlock the Afrobeats evolution and revolution that you're seeing, which also affected the technology space. It's about mindset and mind state. We cannot sit here and spend all our time talking about the negative. How are we going to flip things to move to a positive space? We know the problems. She's totally right about SMEs. She's totally right about the frustration. And you can hear the anger and the energy. Let's convert that anger and energy to positive action. And the positive action we all need to push for is to reform education, to empower our people with the skills to win in the future. We're already in the future economies. And to do that, you can sit in anywhere you want to sit in Nigeria. As long as you have internet access, you can be earning thousands of dollars a month as a coder, as a digital skills marketer. We need to move our people because we are not producing the jobs. Government cannot produce the jobs. So we have to rethink how we are running our country. And the other thing, of course, somebody said it, I think it was her as well. What is our agenda? What is our story? Who are the Nigerians, right? We've been sitting here, and I was thinking about this the other day. I'm doing a documentary series right now on the journey of Nigerian music. We've done 250 interviews in 30 days. And I thought to myself, there are no biopics on any Nigerians. It's as if we don't understand the value we have and we create and what we bring to this world. And this is across politicians, government, intellectuals, authors, novelists, musicians, influencers, journalists. Nothing. We don't tell our stories. And if you don't tell your stories, you can't learn from your past. You will not be able to honor your present, and you cannot go forward. So I think the most important thing to remember is that the media should be the storytellers, and that storytelling should be intentional. If we want to inspire our nation and move our people forward, it is about the tone and the manner of our communication that will enable people to have inspiration. If you do spend all your time doing negative, all you will get is negative. So we know we are in a tough situation. How do we change that? How do we change the tone of conversation? How do we change the situation between government and the media in terms of that combative, bitter thing we see sometimes on Twitter? Because the truth of the matter is, we are only the ones hurting ourselves. Everybody else on the planet knows the capacity of Nigerians and of Nigeria. And I think most Nigerians know that we're probably only, I don't know, maybe we're operating on 15, 20% of our real capacity. So what I was asking myself is, what happens when we step into our opportunity and actually focus on working together across old media, new media, and those who will drive the future to arrive at a place where we can have a cohesive narrative for ourselves as a people, as a nation, because what everybody has said, which is totally correct, is you can't inspire anybody if you're disconnected from yourself, right? So the media cannot be the one to inspire the people if there's no leadership to inspire the media. It's all connected. You cannot, the media is not going to be inventing things that do not happen or are not real, because then it becomes completely irrelevant and nobody pays attention to it. So media is reflective of society, but media can also influence society. In my view, when you look at Nigeria and Nigeria's development opportunities and Nigeria's challenges, a lot of it lies around the stories we tell ourselves, how we communicate ourselves, and how we present ourselves. If you communicate yourself negatively, there's no reason why anybody should engage you. If you push yourself, if all you do is push the negative, why should I engage? Because everybody has trouble. In this period of the pandemic, some countries have stepped into the opportunity and made billions for their economies. Some countries sat back and engaged in conspiracy theories. Which one do we want to be? When are we going to engage the fact that we have so many brilliant Nigerians, people from medicine to science, from innovation to technology, doing incredible things every single day? When we back Nigerians, we will win. And the problem in Nigeria, I was sitting in one of these meetings recently with a lot of governors and ministers, and after 10 hours, I said to them, you've been talking for 10 hours. One of you spoke about Nigerians. The average Nigerian is 19. Not one of you spoke about their intellect, their IP. The biggest talent we have in our country is the IP of the Nigerian. It's not the oil and gas. It's the IP of the Nigerian. It's the human capacity, the skill, the talent, the creativity. That is what is going to save us. That's what's going to make us win. That's what's going to make us own the future. So the minute we invest in that, in education, all of these things you're talking about with media and governance and society, they're all connected to one singular thing. And that's the mind states in which leadership is operating. So for me, I don't want to dodge the issue of the port reform, because the port reform is critical, but I actually think we're building a lot of infrastructure right now. If we can connect our infrastructure and get the private sector to buy into that as being built and keep connecting our country is disconnected. When we keep connecting our country, we're going to create marketplaces. We have to be intentional about creating marketplaces that will drive the economy. SMEs cannot thrive if they don't have access. So these things are connected. Everything is all about leadership. At the end of the day, it comes back to leadership. It's not at the presidency alone. It's at the state level, it's the local government level, community level, sector level, and the industry level, because we have to have a common strategy, a common narrative to push ourselves forward. And that, for me, is the most important role for the Nigerian media.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obiasika. Wonderful, wonderful perspective. And one thing I hold on to is connecting our infrastructure. We have them scattered all over, but there is no connectivity. I think that is very, very important for our government to start looking at. Next, I'm moving to Mr. Sheriff Quadri. Let's have your thoughts on some of the things you think the government can do to better the lot of Nigerians.
Thank you very much. Their submission by the previous speakers. Brilliant, very, very brilliant. I'm going to start with the maritime sector that you asked earlier. The maritime sector is quite important to Nigeria. I mean, if you look at our geographical location, you would know that we've not even started scratching the surface as to the potential, the enormous potential of the maritime sector to Nigeria. A lot of things we could have harnessed as a people, a lot of benefits that we could have derived as a nation. We're not doing as much as we should. Nigeria has about 6 ports: Apapa and Tinkan, Onne, Port Harcourt, Warri Port, and Calabar Port. But go around these ports, you see that number one, infrastructure is in near comatose in almost all these ports. The only port that is that looks like it's functioning optimally, looks like is a Lagos port. But then again, you have to ask people who import, who exports, as to their experience, with the Lagos ports, and that, oh, well, maybe it's not really functioning because they have to go through a lot, to transact business in Lagos port. And there are a lot of factors responsible. And one of such factors is the duplicity of functions by government agencies. That needs to be streamlined. If we want to get our ports to function optimally, government agencies working at the port, some of them don't even have any business there. Some of them don't even have to be there. Some of them don't have to be there every day. So there are a lot of things that, government, I don't know because there was a time that an instruction was given that some of them should vacate, but then before you know it, they're all back there again. So corruption is rife. And in order to cut down the corruption at the ports, the activities of government agencies at the port need to be streamlined, which means that there is need to engage, to employ and deploy latest technology. Our port is not as big as the port in Amsterdam, for instance. If you go to France, I mean, these are big. If you go to Germany, for instance, these are countries with functioning, bigger, more efficient ports. Now, what is so difficult? What is so difficult in operating the ports that we can't even get to operate? Now, the infrastructure is another thing entirely that we can't even begin now, because sometimes you begin to query whether government even has any intention to make the ports functional. Because if you know that, a place is your cash cow, you want to put everything, you want to do everything to make sure that you get the most you can from such a place. But that is not the case for our Nigerian ports, especially Lagos ports. And one of the problems Lagos ports, to be very honest with you, one of the biggest problems that you have on Apapa, Tinkan, all the traffic and the trucks and the everything is that we have not really explored the other ports that we have. I don't know. I've heard so many things about how this is deliberate, by the government because of some governance and lack of trust issues with other ports in other parts of the country. We have some deep-seated, deep-rooted issues, lack of trust. And that is what is affecting most of our ports. Because let's assume that we allow, an airport is functioning, maybe not optimally, but let's assume that you allow an airport to function optimally, or Port Harcourt port to function optimally, or Warri Port or Calabar, or you have like ports in the east, for instance. The traffic that Lagos port is experiencing will not be there. The speed with which the infrastructure at the Lagos port deteriorates will not be there. Then more infrastructure can be built. Like Obi says something about connecting our infrastructure. You can't, I don't even know where it's done, where everything that's coming in from the port must go through, at least not everything, like 90% of things that are coming through the port must go through the roads. The roads will not last. So we need rail connected to the port so that, things can move. I mean, if you meet importers, they will tell you that it's easier to bring things in from China. It's easier and cheaper to bring things in from China than to transport the same goods, the same consignment from Lagos to Enugu, for instance. How does that make any sense? How? How does that make any sense? That it's cheaper to bring things in from China than to transport that same consignment from here, Lagos here, to Enugu. Apart from those in the ports, the touts themselves will collect again. There is a racket going on in the port area as to how convenient or how quickly you will load your consignment if you've gone there to pick up it. So there's a lot. First is we need to digitize. We need to digitize operations. We need to streamline operations. If we don't digitize operations at the port, we'll continue to experience the same problem. Nothing will change. After digitizing the port, then we need to also look at the processes that involve freight forwarders from the parking whatever bay to going inside the port to go. And I've done so many interviews as regards that port, and it's quite frustrating when freight forwarders tell you what they have to go through each time they want to clear their consignment. Port is very integral to the economy of this country. But why it is looking like it's deliberate effort to sabotage everything in the port is what I can't decipher that. I don't have an answer to that. But one thing I do know is that if we get our ports to function optimally, the economy of this country will fare a lot better. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that perspective. Right about now, we are moving to the end. We need to wrap up right now. But to do that, I don't know if the panelists if you still have one or two things you want to say, or we'll bring in the Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry to give us the closing remarks, and then we have vote of thanks. So it's been wonderful, thought-provoking, and we have a lot of perspectives from our panelists. I think Mr. Dr. Femi Adekoya, do you have something to say before I call in the Deputy President? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just going to quickly say two things. First, I want to disabuse our mind. I think I heard the lady, she was trying to confirm how subsidy can also help. I feel we should also, this is my position anyway, but it's also based on evidence. We should also understand that subsidy it's not just for the rich. The poor actually enjoy the subsidy that is being paid on petrol. When we look at the fact that the bulk of petrol used in this country oftentimes goes to many homes in terms of supplying alternative electricity. So when we consider that, we understand that the average SME, the Baba on the road, at every point in time they put on a generator, they're actually being subsidized. And as it is, subsidy has to be paid at one point in time, either through production or at the point of consumption. So we need to understand that it's done in many countries when you try to ease the pain of people. Then two, I will also say for things to work right, the social contract between Nigerians, the governed and the people being governed, the governors, the government and the people being governed, the social contracts between Nigerians, between the two of them have to be, we need to revisit it, because apparently the social contract is broken, and that's why you find that several reforms that government has tried to embark upon have never been successful, because one, people also do not take ownership of these reforms, and people do not see sincerity of the government in terms of in being sincere about its reforms. So until we're able to look at some of these issues, it might be very difficult to keep moving around the cycle, and that's apparently what's going to happen. Papa Port's problem has always been there, and it's quite unfortunate that even the new ports, the Lekki ports, the axis, if you look at what's happening, that's what's going to befall that area, is the next problem. And who is looking to solving that problem? So these are things we need to talk about. We can talk about electricity problem from now to tomorrow. There are challenges at the distribution and the transmission end. There are several problems. So for government reforms to work, I think we need to revisit our social contracts and how to end people's trust. Because even like I was telling someone, I said, even if the next administration comes in, we need to take our mind off that a Messiah is coming. We all need to take ownership and solve these problems. I do not envy who is going to be the next president, because the task at hand are actually enormous, and well, I can only wish the person the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Femi Adekoya, for that perspective. And also, right about now, I would like to invite the Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, FCA, to give the closing remarks. Over to you, Deputy President, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alabi. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, very clearly, sir.
I want to thank the keynote speaker, the president of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, the members of the panel, for a really revealing session. I believe LCCI will want to do this again, at least once a year, if not more than that, because there's been a great opportunity for reflection and for self-examination of the media industry and the nexus between the media industry, the larger economy, and the government. Most of the speakers have addressed solutions. But one solution that the media should seriously consider is, like you have in other industries, whether in the airline, whether in the insurance industry, is the excessive fragmentation of the media industry. In larger economies, CNN is not a standalone business. It is part of a large group of businesses that generate income streams from diverse activities. And so no advertiser can hold CNN to ransom, for example. And here in Nigeria, we are beginning to see that happen with a media house like Arise that is growing into several other businesses. So the media industry as a community needs to look at how fragmented we are, or you are, and how you want to build your strengths, because no one else will build a stronger media industry. The government will not do it. They don't have any stake in doing it. With the kind of people you have in government now, we all agree, who essentially are not getting the government to serve the people. They have no interest in seeing a strong media anytime soon. So the media has to look at how you can build yourself by looking at economic models that are sustainable, that can allow media houses to grow in a manner that is, that is independent of patronage from specific interest groups, whether they are politicians or general advertisers. So that's one of the key points I want to take home. The other key point I would like to take home is the point made by Asika again and again. Our media coverage should not be about lamentations. Anytime I speak to the media, they are surprised that I am so optimistic about the future of Nigeria. And I say to them, if you want to see the future of Nigeria, just go to the Yaba Tech Hub, for example, in Lagos, and similar tech hubs around the country. Go to SME clusters, whether the printing cluster in Shomolu or the textile cluster in Ireland. These people are building the new economy, while the bad guys, the Yahoo boys, and everybody else, the rich ones, are doing things on the outer side. So we must highlight the good stories. We have our own Elon Musk. We have Wave. We have Mandela. We have Innocent. You can count them in almost every industry. We have remitter software that is being used by several African countries out of Nigeria. We have perhaps the largest tech hub, not the typical tech hub, but the research hub in Rwanda, built and owned by a Nigerian group. So we need to balance, as the media, as a matter of policy, the reporting, not only internally to ourselves, because if we keep telling ourselves only the bad stories, we all begin to think how bad we are. But we also have to tell it to the world that Nigeria is not a country with 200 19 million 419ers and just only 1 million good people. The reverse is really true. And so we as a media have to take that as essential corporate strategic mission to tell the story that is, because seriously, we have had visitors of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, including the Prime Minister of Finland. After his visit to the chamber, he said, and everybody continues to remember that statement, that Nigeria is much better than its reputation, because he spent a few days to go around this country. And he was just amazed that out there, at least in Finland and the media story that they get, there's hardly anything that is close to what he met and what he saw. The level of development in the city that is Lagos and the kind of people he met, he did not expect to meet anybody of this caliber, of this quality, with the facilities that he saw. So I am so happy the media person himself will be has mentioned it, that the media has to, as a matter of core strategic positioning of their business, see that it's important to tell the story and not enjoy, as it were, the position of the foreign media that is focused. The foreign media, I can guarantee you that, because I've worked in international space for about 10 years, the foreign media as a policy is focused on giving Nigeria a bad name, period. Whether you want to accept it or not. And the reason is part of what the speaker has referred to, and some of us know that Nigeria will become a great country, an economic power at some point. And the Western world, the industrialized world, see that threat, but they don't know when that threat will emerge. They don't know when Nigeria will become Brazil, India, Turkey, or even China. And so they will do everything to push that back as much as possible. So these are the points I want to leave, ladies and gentlemen. We should continue with lamentations. We should continue to tell the government what is wrong. We do that all the time. But we should celebrate our successes. I do know for a fact that Innocent is now exporting vehicles to countries as far as Mali. They come to import vehicles from Nigeria. But how many of us in the media have said anything about just what is happening to that company? Some people see it as a company hitting somewhere in there. It's not the media story. So I want to thank everyone, Dr. Labi, as usual, for this very, very intuitive event, which will certainly become part of LCCI. I'm a program of perhaps more than once a year, because I see so much potential in the business community and media working to solve Nigeria's problems. Even in the most advanced countries, they depend a lot on policy advocacy. That's why the lobby industry in Washington is a multi-billion-dollar business. There's a licensed, recognized lobby business in other parts of the world, because they know that government does not have all the solutions. So they have to be people who are invested in influencing government policy and putting money, time, and treasure and resources, high caliber intellectual power in influencing government. And we have to see between the media and the economy, of course, very happily led by LCCI. I see how we can begin to be a very powerful force in influencing the government, no matter how unpromising or difficult it is to influence government. We just have to do it. We don't really have a choice. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for all the time invested in this enterprise today.
Thank you very much, Deputy President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Before we take the vote of thanks, we'd like to have a word from our sponsors today, FAE Envelopes, and then we'll come back for the vote of thanks. Thank you very much.
Stories, we all need to think how bad we are.
5 reasons why you should get a tamper-proof envelope. 1, it's tear resistant. You cannot tear it. 2, it has a red security strip, so you would know if someone has tampered with your envelope. 3, it's affordable. 4, it's water resistant. So if you spill your coffee, spill your water, the content of your envelope still remains secure. And 5, it's available nationwide. So go and get a tamper-proof envelope right now.
And everybody continues to remember that.
Thank you very much. Right about now, we want to say, on behalf of the President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we thank our keynote speaker, Mr. Olufemi Awuyemi, MNI. Also, we want to appreciate the contribution of our special guest of honor today, Malam Mukhtar Sirajo, FNIPR, the President of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, and also all our panelists in no particular order: Sheriff Kodri, Mofe Oyatogun, Obi Asika, Bosin Omofaye, Dr. Femi Adekoya, Ololade Akimurele. We have also our Deputy President who just spoke to us, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa, and also our sponsor for today's event, the CEO of FAE Envelopes, Princess Layo Bakari Okeowo, the CEO of FAE Envelopes. We want to thank you and all our panelists. We appreciate your time, your participation, and your presence. Thank you once again. And on this note, we have come to the end of this event. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.